Digitally connected, your donors are. I'm Jeanette Rumsey, Corporate Education and Engagement Manager for Alumni Finder, and today's Flash Class moderator. Before we get started, there are a few important items that I would like to review with you today. Questions can be submitted throughout today's Flash Class, but will be covered at the end of the presentation. Please make sure that you're using the Q&A panel within the GoToWebinar platform to submit your questions. And if there are any questions that we do not cover, you may email those to info@alumnifinder.com for a prompt reply. You can also call the Alumni Finder team directly at 888-732-0581. And next, I would like to go ahead and introduce today's speakers, Nate Patel and Erica Serrano. Nate is Alumni Finder's Executive Vice President of Sales and Service and has been with the company since 2002. Nate is responsible for all aspects of sales, business development, and customer service across Alumni Finder, as well as their parent company, Accudata Integrated Marketing. Erica is Alumni Finder's Director of Email and Digital Marketing Solutions, and she has been with the company for the last 5 years. Her primary focus is on supporting nonprofits through the optimization of multi-channel campaigns with digital strategy, accurate data sourcing, creative design, and campaign execution. So Nate, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you.
All right, thanks Jeanette, and thanks everyone for dialing in for today's webinar. As mentioned, this session is all about why and how to connect with your donors online. So first, we're going to discuss the current state of online giving. Then we're going to look at two leading cohorts and their impact on digital donations. We're going to cover effective ways for you to strengthen your donor file. Erica is going to take us through better creative strategy, and then we're going to end with some tips for your next program and finishing up with finally the questions as Jeanette mentioned. So please submit those throughout. Okay, so first let's begin by level setting the time frames used to establish the generational cohorts we're going to be discussing today. Different sources will cite different age year ranges. For today's presentation, we're referencing the generational bands as per the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You'll notice the graph there on the screen. We're going to center our discussion mainly on the cohorts listed on the left and center above, primarily Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, and Baby Boomers. Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my co-presenter, Erica, and she's going to take us through some key stats on the current state of online giving.
Thank you, Nate, and thank you, everyone, for being here today at this webinar. So in 2016, the majority of consumers questioned about donation habits noted that they preferred to give online and were most often inspired by either email or social media. So let's go over each cohort individually. If you look, 54% of baby boomers prefer to give online and are most inspired to give via email, where 66% of Gen Xers prefer to give online and are also inspired to give via email. Then you look at the last, and it's 72% of millennials prefer to give online and are most inspired to give via social media. So those are the differences there. Let's look at the next slide. Now we know that 54% of baby boomers and 66% of Gen Xers stated that they were inspired to give by email. But if you can see in the stat, email messaging only accounted for 26% of online revenue. So there's a lot more to go. And on average, over 1% of website visitors made a donation. So these generational cohorts, they're telling us that they prefer to donate online. They're telling us which online channel inspires them, yet we're seeing these low percentages. So where is the disconnect? Let's take a deeper overview look on the state of online donations in 2016. Overall, online revenue growth increased by 14% in 2016, and email messaging accounted for 26% of online messaging, like we just discovered. Email revenue increased by 15% over the previous year. So like I mentioned earlier, on average, about 1.2% of website visitors made a donation, which is an 8.3% increase from 2015. So they're definitely going in that direction because it increased. Nonprofits raised about $1.19 per website visitor. And these numbers are clearly showing us that the percentage of donations coming from email and online donations are increasing, but there's still a ways to go. They're not nearly in line with the percentages of people that are stating that they would prefer to donate online. So this just tells us that it's important to be digitally connected now with these generations. It's so important. It shows us that there's much more opportunity for you to join in on these trends. So next, let's discuss how the up-and-coming cohorts will impact the future state of online giving.
All right, thanks, Erica. So you're all sitting there thinking, millennials, really? The short answer is yes, really. They are, along with Gen Z, the future of your nonprofit donor base. Millennials are the largest cohort to date and just continue to grow. And it's projected to be, that Gen Z is projected to be just as important. The cohort's trailing end is still as undefined. You know, both millennials and members of Gen Z are considered true digital natives. They both have fully embraced all the technology has to offer. They're considered early adapters and rely heavily on basically a constant flow of information. While some millennials may recall dial-up connections and maybe flip phones, most of them and all of Gen Z look at mobile devices and connectedness as a given. These attitudes have shaped the way that nonprofits fundraise and will continue to do so in the future. So let's spend some time here talking about the millennial audience. So 83 million strong as of 2016, and some estimates go as high as 90 million. They represent a third of the U.S. population. As mentioned, they're the largest living generational cohort. They surpassed baby boomers in 2016. The millennial population is expected to continue growing until 2036 as a result of immigration. They represent more than $200 billion in annual spend by some statistics, and other estimates have that upwards of $600 million. By 2020, so basically we're talking about 3 more years, they're projected to have an annual spend of $1.4 trillion and will be responsible for 30% of retail sales. So over 40% of this group is multicultural, and they make up a third of the U.S. workforce. So they're not only the largest generational cohort, they're the largest cohort in the workplace. And then here's an interesting statistic. 40% are now parents. Just over 1 million millennials are becoming moms each year. And think about that, about how this group continues to evolve and change. As a short time ago, 70% of those surveyed in the millennial group said they would never have children.
Interesting.
So as we look at their attitudes towards philanthropy, it helps to understand some of the characteristics that define the millennial mindset. Millennials are socially conscious and focused on sustainability of resources and a healthy environment. This extends to how many millennials view health and nutrition as well. Millennials as a group are more open-minded on trending social issues and causes. So knowing what drives them helps explain that they are motivated to give by an intrinsic interest in a cause. Almost half reported that they volunteered. They will financially support numerous causes, and the top 5 being children and female causes, human and civil rights, education, and animals. Okay, now Erica is going to share some details on Gen Z for you.
Yes, thank you, Nate. And I agree. There is significant amount of research that couples Gen Z and millennials as creating a true generational cohort. But it's challenging because some of the Gen Z youngest members are just post-toddler, in their toddler years. But even so, demographic researchers are also finding distinct differences between the two. Let's take a look at introducing Generation Z. While Gen Z is still a little too young, like I just mentioned, to be making donations, they are actively influencing the purchasing decisions made in their households. Interestingly enough, 50% of Millennial and Gen X parents agree that their children do influence their household buying decisions in most categories. They also are exposed to a great deal of media. 74% reported that their favorite free time activity was to spend time online. And as having a Gen Z myself, my daughter is 8 years old, and I can tell you that the first thing she asks for is the Wi-Fi password whenever we arrive at a hotel or somewhere else that we're going to spend some time because they are just online. Gen Z is online. They're continuously visually stimulated by ads, by stories, by experiences, and they are influencing their parents, which right now are your current or prospective donors.
I can second that, Erica. My 14-year-old has all the say.
Exactly. So let's look a little bit deeper. This is about Gen Z. They spend an estimated $44 million and growing. This is their own cash from allowances, side jobs, gifts. This is their own cash that they're spending. They make up about 2.5 billion of the global population, and by 2020, they will be making up 40% of the U.S. population. As we mentioned earlier, 82% of parents said that their children do influence their spend, so they're right there with you, Jeanette.
Yeah.
And the children know this because 93% of children said that they influence their spend in their household. And have I mentioned that they're online? Yes, they are online. 74% spend an average of 5 hours per day. Can you imagine? 5 hours per day online. So we've discussed millennials and Gen Xers. Let's go over some information on the future outlook of donating. Gartner expects over 20 billion connected things to be in use by 2020. 13.5 billion of those will be in the consumer sector. So what we're talking about here is we're giving you some information about the Internet of Things. All devices that are going to be connected are further going to be emphasizing that your donors are online, your prospective donors are online. They are completely connected. And to reach millennials specifically on Facebook, nonprofit organizations will have to move past promoted posts. And the reason for that is because there's a Facebook stat that states only 8% of page fans or of business page fans will see the promoted posts. Therefore, it's going to be really important for these organizations to budget accordingly for social media paid advertising so that they can get out there and receive more donations. And to continue to reach millennials on social, nonprofits will have to invest in staff, advertising, premium tools to get them engaged, because these are the tools that these millennials are on. If you're ever around a Gen Zer, you'll know this to be true. Gen Z users are usually showing a greater pull towards Instagram and Snapchat over Facebook.
It's a great point, Erica, but it's also, as you look at any of these stats, it's important to note that these cohorts, they're just not static groups. So both groups continue to evolve. It was basically just a short time ago that millennials kind of looked down on Facebook, and now you can see that our current statistics show that they favor that. So we need to keep an eye on these trends and how they impact our fundraising efforts.
You're absolutely right. And speaking about Facebook, Instagram is actually owned by Facebook, and they may soon be accepting online donations, and whereas Snapchat already has Snap Cash, and Snap Cash, which could also be a valuable tool for nonprofits there. Email marketing. Emails will need to have mobile donation buttons. We'll go over this in more detail. We'll be discussing some of these creative examples later in the presentation. But I wanted to make sure that you also want to make sure that you're including download links for mobile apps as well, because Gen Z will prefer to donate via apps over web pages in the future, and those mobile apps will be powered by mobile wallets. So mobile.
Absolutely.
So you might be asking yourself, what is the formula that I need to do right now? How can I get started? And here's how. Apply valuable meaning to your messaging with stories. This is what I tell my clients. This is where email marketing meets storyboarding. Drive a compelling story. Tell a compelling story through a series of emails that your recipients will follow and they'll be emotionally engaged with. Version stories with corresponding imagery that your audience can connect with, if possible. Multi-channel is key, definitely. Remember that these generations are digitally connected. Did we mention that already? They're online for 5 hours, give or take. So include digital display, include social media advertising as touch points too, alongside your email marketing. The goal overall is to create an emotional connection for better response. So now I'll turn it over to Nate so he can begin discussing ways to strengthen donor databases.
So the question then, just to follow along with what Erica just said, is what do we need to follow that build a story blueprint that she just laid out for us? I love this first bullet on this slide. Third-party data tells us how to act. The very nature of third-party data is that it's compiled for the purpose of adding value to marketing-related activities, including brand awareness, donor appeals, building a story. By leveraging third-party data, you can both enable and optimize your donor database for multi-channel engagement. So we've got 6 ways. We've got 6 ways for you to leverage that third-party data. I'm going to take you through the first 3. So first is email append and reverse append. It's simple, adding email records to fill in gaps or adding postal information to existing email records. Second is looking for alternate email addresses. So for an example, if the South Florida Food Bank has my Yahoo email address, they are out of luck. I use Gmail almost exclusively now, and I have my Comcast forwarded to my Gmail. I don't do anything with the old Yahoo account. And then, so basically, you're going to replace dormant emails with responsive ones. And then the third area on this slide is spend time validating email list. You're going to be able to identify both erroneous data, people that key in information the wrong way, but you'll also identify problematic addresses and possible spam traps.
And 4 is social media append, and this is the ability to increase your overall visibility and engage with your valued donors by adding social media IDs to your database. And then we have device ID targeting, or IP display targeting, and that allows you to reach your audience by matching their postal address to our IP database, our IP address database, so that we can serve these banner ads to where they are at home. And this is across the household. So, for example, I donate to Alzheimer's causes, and because sometimes they will do IP targeting to my household, my husband will be on the computer and know something is going on with Erica. She must have donated to Alzheimer's because he is now seeing that. Where the difference is with device ID targeting, it provides the ability to target your audience on devices, so specific to me. So if I donated from my iPad, that is where I will begin to see the retargeting. Just different types of targeting just with display. And then lastly is the demographic and lifestyle append, which is basically building out your data so you know exactly who you have in your database.
Okay, so now we're going to transition. We're going to transition over to 5 important areas to consider when you're creating donor-worthy digital appeals. The very first is you need to have a personalized appeal, and you do that with list segmentation. Don't shy away from this. Application of the third-party data that we talked about earlier allows you to examine potential segments and defining groups within your database. Use this intelligence to customize emails, social media ads, and that speak directly to the individual donor. Okay, the second is optimize. Making sure all of your creative is mobile optimized. More than half of all email messages are being opened on a mobile device, and this number, it continues to grow every single year. By utilizing responsive design, you avoid turning younger cohorts off. Remember, they view the world through a mobile lens. If it looks like the message does not belong, you're going to run the risk of unsubscribe, spam, damaging your brand's reputation and credibility. All right, the third area that we're going to cover, and we're going to do this one in some detail, is landing pages. It's a must. You should not expect success if your digital efforts are directing people back to a general website. Landing pages should be considered table stakes. And Erica has some tips for us, but please don't overlook this powerful component.
Thank you, Nate. You're exactly right. We still see email marketers that will just link to the main home page, and there's a disconnect. So let's talk about that. Keep the design simple, a specific page that follows the design from the email. Keep it clean with a focus directed at the audience that is receiving your message. Clearly represent your brand. Use design elements, the tone, the context, that are very similar to the email message, so that when they click through to the landing page, they understand that it corresponds to what they were just reading in their email. Quickly grab attention with a strong, to-the-point headline. Remember, when you have received to the point of being to a landing page, that means that you have about 2 to 8 more seconds because they're interested, but you don't have a lot of time. These are generational cohorts that are used to having a lot of interaction and having a lot of engagement online, but they're not going to give you a lot of time, which goes to Nate's point that you have to make sure that it's mobile responsive, because if you're zooming and pinching and squinting to try to see something, they're going to actually abandon the page. Elaborate on the mission, add persuasive content, and tell donors how their support will make a difference. That's important to them. They want to know how they're making a difference. Use compelling imagery that tells the story. We spoke about storyboarding, making sure that we engage emotionally. Create a clear call to action that encourages conversion. Ensure a strong contrast between your button and your background. So if you have a blue button and you want to put text in it, let's put something bright or black, depending on the hue of blue, but have it be easily distinguished and easy to see. And of course, limit the data collected on forms. The more data that you have to fill in as a potential donor, the less conversion you're up to get. So here's an example. Here's an example of a landing page by the American Heart Association, and you can see that it's definitely clean. It uses their branding colors very nicely. It's easy on the eyes. It has icons and options that are quick and easy to grasp and act upon, because remember, like I said, if they've already clicked through to this, your time to engage them is even more limited. So it's important that you make it easy. This quickly asks how you would like to donate with images, the type of gift and the amount that you'd like to give. And it's easy clicks, or like I say, easy taps, because we don't click on mobile, right? We just tap it. So it's very easy to digest, and if you look at it, it just doesn't even take a lot of time to digest the information, and that's important.
It's so clean, you can really see how this particular screen would differ from their general web page. So if an email message just drops someone right on their web page, but you go to this little landing page, and it exactly spells out what you're supposed to do.
And the thing that I like about this too, if you notice, it's already got options pre-selected for you. So if you're happy with a one-time gift to a general fund and you're willing to donate $100, you go from possibly 4 clicks to donate to 1 click to donate.
Love that.
But they also give you the option to speak to someone live if you have any questions, and they have provided the phone number for individuals that aren't comfortable making a donation online. So this is great for a wide variety of audiences.
That is very true. Great example. And then we have this example by Ironman Foundation. First of all, let me bring attention to that catchy M. Definitely brings out the humanitarian there. In the form of a person, it's a very nice touch. In this example, we see the importance of making your landing page mobile responsive, so you can see on the mobile device how it is responsive. So it's not exactly apples to apples, but you can see where that becomes important, so that you're not squinting and zooming in if you're landing on this landing page. In this case, the viewer also is able to customize their online experience.
This is really important from a millennial perspective, because we know based on our millennial research that they are more drawn to different types of missions they can support when they can customize the experience they have with that nonprofit. So while some people may not be able to give monetarily, they would be more than happy to donate their time or their services. So I really love this approach.
Oh, me too. You talk about loving that. I love this one, and we're starting to see why. This is a fantastic example of interaction by a nonprofit geared towards feeding and caring for the less fortunate kids. And with these up-and-coming generations that they have, we've already talked about how much screen time they have, right? So it's very important to catch their eye even further, and this type of animation and movement is catchy.
Absolutely. So they're telling a beautiful story with all of the imagery. They're allowing the user to control the journey by going in and exploring stories on different children. They're even allowing the user to go in and customize the areas that they're looking at. So this is a great example of how to turn a landing page into an interactive experience for your visitors.
Okay, so much good content there. So thanks on landing pages. Thanks both Erica and Jeanette on that. The fourth area that we're going to cover is digital retargeting. The DMA tells us that 7 to 13 impressions are needed to create a conversion or donor. Leverage the interest you have in an open email by additional digital touch points and maximize the cost of effectiveness of re-engaging with perhaps like lapsed donors or lost alumni or members with email marketing. And lastly, cover social media advertising. We cover social media advertising and appeal. And so Erica made this clear earlier that you can't just do the promoted post. It needs to be advertising. Donors, members, and prospects are checking their phones and Facebook accounts dozens of times per day. Make sure the targeted call to actions are showing up in member and prospect news feeds, right under their thumb, literally. Further encourage interaction with your cause and message using carousel ads. Get them engaged and maybe even tell the story right there on their news feed.
Nate, you're going to love this statistic. The latest Millennial research shows that they are checking their phone on average 157 times a day. So we've gone from dozens to almost hundreds.
I don't know if I love that or not.
It is enlightening.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one more stat, which is the latest from Facebook, is that out of these times, the average is 20 minutes that they stay on.
20 minutes, 14 plus times a day.
Yes, do the math. 5 hours.
All right, so we got some really great information there on landing page design, and now Erica is going to take us through some email tips.
Yes. Thank you, Nate. So we started with the landing page. Now let's work backwards towards the email that they see first. The very first thing that we have on here is subject line strategy and testing. That is number one. There are many companies, and again, we consult on this, that will spend hours and hours and hours on creative, which is very important, but they don't spend an equal amount of time on the subject line, which is where most of the people that you're trying to reach will see, whereas only up to 20% of those people will click through and actually get to view your beautiful creative that you spent so much time on. So subject line strategy and testing is key. Use components like curiosity, offer, scarcity, humanity, news, story. Again, urgency is important too, to get people to react in that moment in time. We are very busy, so even if it's in our heart to donate at the time that we see an email, we might be in the middle of something, so maybe creating some urgency. We'll talk a little bit more after on the next slide about some ways to do that. Mobile optimization. I think Nate has made it perfectly clear earlier that we have to prevent donors from deleting or unsubscribing or being upset with the brand because the brand didn't take enough time to make the creative responsive. Color theory is important. We'll also discuss a little bit more in detail about that, but it's important for us to understand the psychology of color and how it can affect your audience when you're communicating with them in these emails. Personalization beyond adding a first name is important. This is leveraging the data profile points that we were talking about earlier to make it feel like a one-to-one approach. Dynamic content, which I'm still loving that landing page that we saw that had so much interaction, but that's the idea. Have dynamic content, surprise and delight. That's what I like. Surprise and delight the email recipients that are opening up with some interaction, some visual stimulation. You can do that by countdown timers, which again will tie into the urgency that's important to boost engagement. And then dynamic gifts, which will be like rotating images that will catch the eye and maybe even assist with telling your story. So let's look at the first example. Let's review here. This is an example of an email that uses color patterns that have a similar hue. They use gray, which portrays a sense of balance, a beautiful deep blue that portrays trust and dependability, and then a peaceful green, which portrays health and growth. They did a really good job elaborating on the 4 ways partnerships save lives. That's important. They want to know that these are 4 ways how their contribution is going to affect or support a life. And then they do a good job on the strong call to action button of Give Now in that bright green.
And I love how you actually know what your dollar is going to there. It's really clearly spelled out, but it's not so much on the screen that it's going to, lose your attention.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So then this one by Young Life versus Cancer, this color scheme uses complementary tertiary colors paired with black. They're pinks and purples, which create imagination and wisdom. Black is professional, and so that's important for that credibility and edginess. And then they use yellow, which is a color of optimism and warmth, which is a very important component in donations. Most importantly, though, they do a great job with imagery, and we spoke about storyboarding. So this is an opportunity to follow this mom's story and all the things that she's facing ever since her child was diagnosed with cancer. So it evokes an emotional connection that provides for better chances of donation, and that's what it's all about in the end, is being able to tell a story so that you can get more involvement and more engagement and, in turn, more donations.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I like the most about this is that the call to action to donate is at the very top. Mm-hmm. So any recipient is going to be able to see that quickly, access it quickly, and not have to scroll through an extended email to find the link to donate. And I think that's important to highlight.
That is. That's a good point. All right. Now we've got 2 mobile responsive creatives to look at. So let's look at the one on the left first. Look closely, because if you really look closely, you will see that the candles are flickering. This is an animated GIF. These are some of the animations that we've been talking about. And it brings us back to having more of that interactivity in your creative to get more engagement out of your email marketing. There's a clear connection to the brand with the colors that they use here. The call to action is also right up top. Talking about call to action up top, it's right up top. And most importantly, they let you know exactly what your gift will do. And that's one of the things that we, through Millennial research, is they want to understand, what is this dollar that I'm giving you going to do exactly? How will it help? They're doing a great job by adding the social sharing buttons because, again, we know that they are online, they like experiences, and they like to share their experiences in what they're doing. So we've discussed that's a huge part of these generational cohorts too. And then if you look at the creative on the right, it shows the use of the countdown timer. Those are one of the things that we mentioned earlier that will assist you not only in being interactive because it's moving in times, but it's also urgency. It helps provide that interaction with the viewer, but it also lets them know that there's a time clock on there. They do a nice job using quick and easy to understand graphics. You can see there what your money does and how far it goes, and what you're doing and what your donation will help with the cause.
Yeah, that's super important to me. I love that $1 equals, 1 meal for a pet. I love that. That's awesome.
And the puppy doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't. Very cute puppy. Very cute puppy.
Great. So, wow, we covered a lot of content in about 35 minutes. So we're really glad that you guys were able to participate with us. We did, from defining how and why connecting with the 2 youngest cohorts is important, to engaging them where they are and doing so in meaningful ways, a better understanding of your online presence, communication strategy. Hopefully we gave you some areas that you could compare and contrast with your own strategy, with landing pages and emails, best practices. And finally, and throughout, I think Erica and Jeanette both touched on, building that compelling story to capture and keep your audience engaged, and how important that is.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate you taking the attendees through the material, but we're not done yet because we have a lot of questions that have come in. So again, everyone, please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A panel within GoToWebinar. We're going to start addressing those. So Erica, I would like to go ahead and send this first question to you, please. We have an attendee asking, do I have to do a social media append to be able to run a Facebook ad campaign?
Not at all. Not at all. Well, social media append will provide you with social IDs for some of today's most used social sites, like some of the ones that we've mentioned today. It's definitely not required for a Facebook advertising campaign. We can use your donor database that you have already, or we can create a custom audience for your ads without having to know exactly who your donor is. We also have the ability to build audiences and lookalikes in Facebook too.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Erica, we've got a question that's just come in that I'm going to get to you because you spoke to personalization with regards to email design. So we have an attendee that's asked, what are some examples of personalization that goes beyond the first name? So if you can talk a little bit more about how data plays a role in helping us to build out donor profiles and how we can do some customizations of imagery based on who we know we're communicating with, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, being able to append attributes to the donor file that you already have, if you don't already have all the information, is very important. And understanding the history of the donations will also assist. So some of the other personalizations could be, thank you for donating to X organization in your past, but we can also, can you help us with this cause? Beyond the first name, and it just all depends on any of the data elements that we can actually append for you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So our next question is regarding Facebook fundraising ads, how long it takes to get one of those up and running. Nate, would you go ahead and address that, please?
Sure, yeah. Good question. So once we receive all the assets from the client, we typically can get the ad approved and live within about 72 hours. And the assets that you would need to get a campaign going would be obviously URL, creative, campaign dates, and a list of the audience criteria if, as Erica mentioned, we're going to be selecting an audience for you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have a great question that has just come in. Why is our name Alumni Finder? I love that. Because really, when you think about it, nonprofits are probably asking, well, hey, you guys are Alumni Finder as part of your business to help colleges and universities. And yes, absolutely, that's actually how our business was founded. We work with some of the nation's leading colleges and universities to help them reconnect with lost alumni. And from there, we've been able to grow our products and services to support nonprofits who oftentimes are in need of similar types of services. So thank you for asking. So Erica, I'm going to go ahead and direct this next question to you. We have an audience member that's asking about subject line length for mobile viewers and if there's a guideline that needs to be followed.
Yes, you would want to keep the subject line to about 35 characters because that is the number of characters that are usually seen in all mobile devices across all email clients, so even mobile apps that you're using, whether you use a Gmail app or et cetera. 35 is a good number to keep to in your subject lines. And that it does include punctuation and spacing, so don't forget to count those too.
Okay, excellent, great. And Erica, I'm going to go ahead and give you this next question as well too. You know, you had some really great tips in the presentation for emails. Are there any that apply specifically to fundraising emails that you can share?
Yes. So people skim emails more than they read. So try to keep your text bulleted. Short and easy to digest information. I think I can't emphasize that enough. Paragraphs are hard. You can get away with paragraphs on landing pages sometimes, but in emails where, again, you only have anywhere between 2 and 8 seconds, definitely bullet the information. Keep your images compelling. Remember, you're telling a story relating to a specific mission, so keep those images compelling. Use your subject line to grab attention, and there's also pre-header information that you can put into the pre-header, which is usually viewed on your mobile device as like it's almost like the subject line is your sneak peek, but then you even have a bonus sneak peek on the content. So utilize that space too. And what can I tell you on the landing page? Make sure that the email design matches the landing page. I know we've mentioned that, but it's very important because when there's a disconnect in imagery or tones or the look and feel, it causes confusion. And confusion coupled with only a few seconds online will just cause abandonment, and that's what we don't want. One of the most important things to keep in mind is to have that call to action button very clear, like we kept mentioning up on the top, very visible, very easy to click on. If you want to get technical, for any technical people on the line attending our webinar, 44 pixels by 44 pixels is a good size for a call to action button because it's about the average size of a thumb. So that's what I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you. So another question that's come in is asking us to restate some of the Facebook stats that we discussed earlier. So Facebook has recently published that their average user is checking Facebook about 14 times a day, and that most of those checkpoints, Erica, you said about 20 minutes, correct?
Yes, 20
okay,
minutes.
Perfect. But now, if you think about millennials, they are checking their smartphones about 160 times a day. That's not always going to be Facebook or social media sites. That's going to be email, text messages, phone calls, voicemail, YouTube. There you go, YouTube, especially for some of our Gen Xers, or I'm sorry, Gen Zers. But yes, they are spending a good deal of time on social media sites. So it is something to be very considerate of in your communications. So Nate, the next question I would like to go ahead and give to you. We have an attendee that is asking how she would be able to identify which of her current donors are millennials.
Okay, yeah, so great question, and also, speaks to how we're basically creating these custom segments or versioning when sending emails. But the easiest way to do it would be just to do a date of birth append. Once you have that year of birth, you can segment the file between 1981 and 2000, and there are your millennials, but you could do it for other groups within your database as well. You make sure, this kind of covers every sort of demographic append, but when you're working with a data provider like Donor Search or Alumni Finder or whoever you work with, make sure that you're asking them about bundled demographic packages, because oftentimes you can get more than just one element added to the file, and it could also help to create that versioning or maybe those customized appeals like home market value or income, something like that. So I know that the question was specific about millennials, but it's more about demographic append too. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Several of our attendees have asked about having future access to the slides and or today's presentation. Absolutely. So there are two different places that you'll be able to go to get that information. First, I would invite you to go to donorsearch.net and look for the recorded videos on their resources tab. And I would also invite you to visit alumnifinder.com. We also have a resources section, and you'll be able to explore webinar videos there. And then for our next question, Eric, I'm going to go ahead and give this back to you. On the subject of retargeting, how does that work when we're talking about CRM retargeting for non-responsive donors?
CRM non-responsive. Okay. Yeah, we can take lapsed donors from your database. If you've already identified them as unengaged or unresponsive, we can begin serving ads to them, thoughtfully placed digital display, social media, via Facebook, highlighting the cause of your mission. We do need an email address, but if your donor database only has the postal, one of the things that Nate was discussing earlier was we can execute an email append. That way we append the email address and utilize that to further the display.
Great.
Advertising.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Folks, in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and just take one last question. Nate, I would like you to go ahead and address this, please. We have an attendee asking if there are mailing lists of people that have donated to certain types of charities.
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to the appending of demographics that we've been talking about or creating segments, going after prospect universes or procuring mailing lists for that effort is something that we see all the time. And you can segment by groups of charities, so types, meaning like environmental causes, political causes, health-related causes, or in some cases really specific types of charities as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Nate, Erica, and myself, as well as the entire Alumni Finder team, and on behalf of Donor Search, I would like to thank you for attending today's flash class. I invite you to contact us for any questions that you may have on how you can positively impact your fundraising through the use of digital channels. And I would also like to invite you to look for upcoming notifications on future flash classes from Donor Search. Thank you again and have a terrific rest of the day.